What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, coming at you today with another episode of Does It Suck? The show where we take a deep dive look at a new game and see what's good or bad about it. This time we're going to be checking out the new beta for Mortal Kombat 11. Now this game is something that a lot of us have been anticipating for a bit because after its initial reveal, everybody's just been kind of aching to see any details we could on the new combat, the new characters, and of course, the new fatalities. Well, this morning I got access to it and I've been playing it a bunch, but really this game, it's kind of just the sequel you're probably predicting. To be quite frank, they didn't add a lot. What they did instead is created a lot of polish. This is a game that already seems to be trying to refine the already almost magical balance of Mortal Kombat. This game is great. Now in this beta, I only have access to 3 separate characters, which are of course Scorpion, Scarlet, and Baraka. And since Scorpion is one of the oldest and most famous characters in the entire franchise, unfortunately, about 99% of people online would only play as him. So if you're seeing a bunch of him in these matches, I promise it's just the fact that people are a little bit unoriginal. But I still just had so much fun fighting against anybody because the new combat style and the tweaks they've made are so fantastic. So let's just get this out of the way right at the start. Mortal Kombat is a very, very different kind of fighter. If you've never actually sat down with a controller in your hand and tried to get good at these, the biggest difference between this and other fighting games is that they are very, very strategic. Now, let me just show you an example of that. So here's a dude I did a bunch of matches against, and he is by far the best player I encountered online. I will fully admit that he beat me every single time, and sometimes just completely decimated me, but it was awesome to even fight him and get my butt kicked because he was just so careful. There is a lot of strategy in your motions in Mortal Kombat. Every single swing of your fists or time you're trying to do a special can be a little bit more slow and methodical, which means you need to try and carefully predict what your enemy is going to do so you can properly counter them. Like in this guy's case, this dude was able to constantly block my moves, throw out some great stuns, and constantly chain me together into really long hit sequences. But that's the thing about this, Mortal Kombat is about more than just good combos or chain attacks, it's really about trying to dominate the battlefield. And here is where I absolutely fell in love with the new person Scarlet. Now, it's true that she was in a previous game as downloadable content, but for people like me who just usually buy the base games, play them for a couple months and eventually move on, to me she feels very, very fresh and very, very different. Her main ability that nobody else has is blood magic, which is basically where she can actually solidify and control droplets of blood. So many of her different sequences and just basically a lot of her attacks are based around literally pulling the life out of your body and using it as a weapon against you. And it's great. But this does bring me to perhaps the most interesting element of Mortal Kombat 11, and something that I think is going to definitely eat up the most hours at release, which is that in this beta, I obviously only have access to 3 characters, but it does feel like more than that, mostly because they're actually fighting stances. Everybody has multiples of them, so it feels like, even though there's only 3 characters, it feels like 9. Like, just talking about Scorpion, Scorpion has several different styles of attack. And some of his stuff is like, this stance here is called Boon's Favorite, obviously a reference to the creator of Mortal Kombat, Ed Boon. Well, this dude, depending on how you play him and what his stance is, you can actually make him much more range-based, blowing more fire, doing more grapples, doing more throws. Or you can try and instead change it so that lots of his attacks are much more close range and visceral, something that's going to make him almost change as a character completely just by tinkering with these mechanics. Now, I just want to say that this game is very, very impressive. Every part about this seems so freaking refined and has such a high level of polish. But something that was really cool to me personally is that I'm very, very excited for the story mode. You know, one of my things when it comes to fighting games is I want a complete package. When I'm buying a fighting game, I want to make sure it has so much different styles of content to keep me entertained for a long period of time. I want the biggest bang for my buck. So I decided to actually tinker around with the menus in this beta, and as you can can see, it looks like we're going to have a ton of different options. Not only can we just have random AI fights and training, there's also a single player story that apparently is going to be heavily centered on time travel. There's towers, so you can just basically continually climb up stuff. You can basically just keep going against heavier and heavier difficulty matches until eventually you lose. This is exactly what I was hoping the game would have, is a heavy emphasis on not just high-level play, not just online matches, but also just more ways to enjoy yourself. Going back to the gameplay itself though, something they've done in this that I think is probably the most brilliant move is the idea of the fact that there is now an offensive and defensive style meters on the side of the screen here, which basically control the amount of block you have and also some of the new specials. Like there's this newly introduced concept called the Fatal Blow, which is sort of a reworking of the X-ray specials, but the big thing is that they're accessible at low health. It's basically a way of trying to even the odds. You'll notice sometimes that I'll be getting completely decimated by an extremely good player online, and then right before I die, I manage to at least pull off one of these moves, tear them up a little bit, have a big fancy counter, and feel a little bit better, and sometimes I've even actually managed to make a giant comeback because I was able to pull off one of these cool specials. There's also the Krushing Blow, which is sort of like a power counter, and it's usually something where if somebody's in the middle of an attack, you can execute this to break their combo. It's something that, if used tactically, can completely change the tide of a match. Something people discuss a lot in the online fighting community is the idea of momentum, about how as you're doing good, it actually hypes you up, it gets your adrenaline pumping, it makes it where your brain literally starts processing data faster and essentially makes it easier to crush your opponents. And I definitely think that Krushing Blow is an interesting system because it sort of just throws a gear into the concept of momentum, and I like that. I like being able to try and make that crazy legendary comeback, and sometimes I'm able to do it. All three of the characters in this beta are super good, but I do want to talk a little bit about the matchmaking. So it seems like in the final game there will be a ranking system where it constantly tries to find people who have won as much as you have. If you've won 25 matches in a row, you'll actually go against other people who have also won that many consecutive rounds, and it basically makes it where you're constantly being challenged and also you're not just chewing up noobs all day. Well, in this online thing here, this beta doesn't have that yet. This is just casual play, so you just get thrown into random matches with essentially just anybody on the internet. So what I was curious about is how much these skill levels could be, well, just wildly different, so that was kind of interesting, just suddenly facing people who didn't know the buttons or gods, but also I was curious how people would deal with the online networking. So one of the things that's kind of present in a lot of these games is you need to make sure that the internet infrastructure, the netcode, is built to be as swift as possible. Thankfully, in my experience, it does seem as if NetherRealms and the developers over there have managed to make stuff that is extra liquidy smooth. I only encountered one match where things were laggy, but I will say that it was absolutely awful. I mean, I seriously wanted to have my freaking face ripped off like Baraka when this started lagging because it was just so infuriating. I'm going to show you a little bit of this gameplay here just because I honestly thought I was going to shut the game off, because when this starts to lag, every single time it freezes, every one of your commands stops registering. So if I'm in the middle of trying to, well, if I'm thrown in the air and I'm trying to do a counter attack as I land, if it starts lagging, then sometimes it will not register your counter blow. It's not really considered a glitch in the game so much as it is an error in the server, and it seems like it's just something that's on the player's side. I'm hoping that in the final game, they'll have some sort of option where I can basically say, I only want to fight people with great internet connections, because really, I just really despise trying to get into the arena with people whose computers are so slow they can't land a punch without seeing a loading bar. But these have just been my random off-the-cuff thoughts after spending some time with this, and honestly, I'm impressed. I'm definitely going to be buying this game, but I knew that before I even saw a trailer. Mortal Kombat is a franchise that's very interesting to me, and personally, I actually get invested in the plot lines. I like the stories, I like the characters, and honestly, I just like some gory good combat. But what do you think? Did you get a chance to have early access into this beta like I did, or are you waiting for one of the closed or open betas down the line? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.